Okay, how's everybody doing? We're live on YouTube and TikTok. Hi, Kennedy. Expect an email from me today. Expect an email from me today, Kennedy. I have something special for you coming. Um, but hi, everybody. Well, as always, you guys know it's going to get spiritual on Sundays. I never intend to make it a spiritual church of sorts, but it ends up being that way, which is so funny because I ran away from the church. I wanted nothing to do with it. And lo and behold, sometimes I'll have people come on here and they're like, oh, this is my church. Like, well, here we are to show what the matrix system is, how many times we've seen it in movies and shows and just blatantly ignored it. Earlier today, I was going back and looking at Super Bowl ads from this year that they showed in 2025. And when I tell you it was programming, like predictive programming back to back, if you watch them like consecutively, and there's a link on YouTube that I have where you can watch every single Super Bowl ad, but there were about 3 or 4 commercials back to back talking about aliens. And now, as we get ready for Super Bowl 60, that's coming up in a couple of months, the ICE disclosure is becoming really, really big. Now, just for preface, because we know people come in the lives who don't know what's going on. Sometimes we have bots, like literal bots, who come in and try to mess with people's minds, try to, throw trigger warnings or trigger shots at me. Just know it's a part of it. Being able to navigate this matrix is knowing what's real and what's not. And I make it a part of my page specifically in what I teach, just to bring light to the things that we may be blatantly ignoring in our lives. So as I was watching a lot of these UFO predictions or these different commercials, because there was a few of them. There was one with Pete Davidson and Gordon Ramsay where he was like, yeah, all the celebrities are aliens. Then there was another one. The first one was Doritos, and the Doritos commercial had a guy asleep while trying to monitor UFOs. And then the UFO comes and takes the Dorito bag out of his hand. It's just like the ridiculousness of it all, because then, during the Super Bowl, I believe they showed advertisements for the new Lilo and Stitch movie, the live action version. Then later on during the year, they had another alien movie come out. Pluribus came out as well, which is an Apple TV show that basically talked about the hive mind and aliens as well. Super Bowl 60 is taking place near Silicon Valley in the Santa Clara Bay Area, where most of these tech companies have been built. So when I'm looking at the commercials, it's funny, laugh out loud if you don't know what they're talking about with aliens. It's not so funny to the people who are truly waiting for alien disclosure to come. Now, I am not here to tell you that higher intelligences do not exist. The way in which they exist and how it's been modeled through Hollywood is what we need to be looking at very clearly. Because once you understand that, it's all about perception. It's about how you're actually using your eyes and your brain versus the way that it's being manipulated against you. Now, manipulation sounds like an accusation. So I also have to be careful with my language, especially on, sites like this where I'm being monitored by what I say, to be accusatory of saying, hey, I'm using this image to mold your perception and change what you think about one thing and another. You're accusing us. That's considered conspiracy content. And that's how the game goes. So as I'm watching, I started kind of laughing because I thought about all of the depictions that I've seen in Aliens since childhood. Everything from like American Dad, where you have Roger, to Lloyd in Space. There was a show on Disney Channel as a kid, to E.T., to what was another one? Megamind. I spoke about that a little bit yesterday. I'm like, it's kind of funny. They always depict them the same way. They're either blue or green, colors that are commonly associated with the water. They also usually have them with very large, elongated skulls, as was shown in ancient Egyptian statues that you've probably seen before at least once in your life, which was a depiction of knowledge as well, but also a larger cranial set that they now model in Disney movies like Xenomorph. I don't know if you guys have seen that, or Alien versus Predator. It's just like, it's media. Media is an allegory. It's a way to tell the same stories that have gone on throughout humanity literally forever. So when you're looking at it, obviously, like, this can heighten somebody's sense of adrenaline. Like, oh my gosh, aliens are coming to take over. They're doing this. But alien intelligence is conscious intelligence. Because even the word alien, think about how the word alien and extraterrestrial are used interchangeably. You have alien, which if you break apart that word, away the A, a lien is the right to hold property over another through a bond. Like when you have a lien or a mortgage. Extraterrestrial, if you break up that word, is extra terra. Terra means of the earth. So, what is of the earth and what is of the sea? What is of the cosmos and what is of the earth? And what is a combination of both? So, all of these alien things kind of take me back. I believe Disney has a show called The Mandalorian, and the mandorla, I don't know how you pronounce that word correctly, but it's an Italian word, right? And when they're talking about the Mandalorian, they're talking about an almond. This is why Jesus was born in an almond. He was born in the bladder of a fish. And what is a fish, right? A group of fish is known as a school. So we're all just moving through schools of thought in this matrix through this great archon that we all live in that is being replicated and duplicated. I mean, that's redundant, but through ancient technologies. And so another thing that had me laughing, like you really have to laugh at this stuff because that's the only way you're going to become grounded. There is a rumor that went around for years that the Matrix code that was written in the movie was sushi recipes. And I was like, wait, why would they say sushi recipes? That's very odd to say something like that. I'm like, clearly it's computer code, but to call it sushi recipes, what is sushi? Raw fish. So it's essentially raw data that's being hijacked and manipulated through codes, through numbering, through ciphers, and through images to literally manipulate human consciousness. And so when you think about the early computers and how they were black and they had the green code on the screen, this binary code is a whole nother language to some people. You're right. Somebody said you never have to read a book. That's why I laugh so much because I'm just looking like, how does nobody see this? How do billions of people blindly watch this? But it's so sad, right? It's not like you see me laughing, but my heart really aches when I see the amounts of mass manipulation that's happening. No, you don't have to read. Oh, you're asking the question. No, you don't have to read a book. You've seen enough symbology in your life. You've consumed enough media, no matter how old you are, over the years, to have the same repeating cycles and pictures show up throughout one's life. You don't need to be highly intelligent. You don't have to read a bunch of books. You need to come in. Okay, hold on. Okay, sorry guys, we're back. But yeah, so you don't have to consume a lot of media. We're programmed with things daily. And so going back to the story of the Mandalorian, you guys know it has like baby Yoda in there. And I've shown some pictures of this before, but I'm like, look at Yoda, look at the three-eyed alien from Toy Story, look at Shrek, look at a picture of Osiris. It's all the same depiction: blue skin, green skin, three eyes, consciousness when you're talking about using your two eyes and using your third one. These are not hard concepts for people to get. Now, that's my personal opinion, but it's only because I have been a child and I have witnessed all of these movies and shows. And so this year, they put out a Disney Pixar movie called Elio about a little Hispanic boy whose aunt works for the government, who they're monitoring the sky with satellites, but they're not actually looking for aliens. And I feel like that was their funny way of saying we're not actually looking for something, it's about the control system that's happening within. Now, do I think galaxies exist? Obviously, yes. But I believe galaxies exist at different states of consciousness. People are not able to perceive outer worlds because they barely understand their inner world. And so, if you don't have any understanding of that, then it all seems like it's just a bunch of, I get called on my page very often. People come on and say, oh, she's just talking gibberish. Well, highly intelligent conversations tend to sound like that to people who are kind of living that Charlie Brown lifestyle, that wah, 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 wah. That's exactly what it sounds like to people. And so that's something I've had to become comfortable with too, because as a teacher, I find myself having to slow down this information. But slowing it down is like me taking frame by frame, showing you different images that you've been given over the years, showing you different things that you've interacted with to say, hey, have you ever asked yourself what this actually means or why you keep seeing it? And the Super Bowl commercials were a little excessive. I'm like, okay, even to someone who is uninformed to all of this, why are they showing you Super Bowl commercials of aliens back to back to back? Why is the government coming out and making articles saying, oh, yeah, we can control time and space, and not one human being is flinching? And not flinching as a moment to go in paranoia per se, but to explore the ideas deeper of how intelligence is actually run. That's my concern. So I'm actually involved in a couple of projects right now to talk about just how deep the tech matrix goes. And so I wrote some notes. I'm going to be sharing a lot in a few podcasts over the next few weeks going into 2026 talking about it. And so modern smartphones are not just private devices, they're technically corporate surveillance tools. So you're signing up for your own imprisonment when you elect to buy a smartphone. Consumers are forced into participation without meaningful consent. The telecom infrastructure is not equal. It's not equity because you don't know what you're getting into when you sign over the terms and agreements. It's kind of like that scene in Willy Wonka, if y'all have ever seen it, the one with Gene Wilder, where all the kids are getting ready to go in and he has the big contract and gives them the pen to sign, and the smaller ink you can barely read. They're like, well, I want to get in the chocolate factory, so let me just sign it. So, what is published within policy when it comes to tech? They show you the terms and conditions, they show you the privacy policy, and they show you the enhanced use lease. But what they do not show you are app permissions, product warnings, interactive command strings, and even buried inside of the settings, you have, more terms and conditions that tell you how the information and data is going to be used and sold to third-party consumers. So that same data moves through the algorithm, of course, because you don't know who all has this third party data. You don't know who it's being passed along to. And because of that, when you see things in your algorithm, you're like, how do they know I was doing that? Or how do they know where I am? You're giving them all of your data 24/7. And this is all of us. We all live in this matrix system. Now, the first thing people usually say is like, how can I hurry up and get out of this? How can I outrun it? You can't outrun what we live in right now, but what you can do is thoroughly understand it. So, taking back to this concept, this picture that you see with me right now, you have the great mother holding a child. She is holding her son. The sun is the solar energy. And I do find it I find it very, very interesting that the Super Bowl is taking place in San Francisco, California. I spoke about this a little bit yesterday. The home of the Bay Area. We're talking about the Golden State, quite literally. Steve Jobs was born in San Francisco, California. Uber, Spotify, well, not Spotify is technically German, but they do have a headquarters there. Um, Apple, Google, all of these homes live in California, which, if we go back in history, was the home of the California gold rush. And the gold rush, because we're talking about solar energy, the sun being birthed, is data extraction. And no matter how much you try to write it off as conspiracy, how many of you have actually read the terms and conditions when it comes to these cell phones and these smartphones? I myself have gotten like a master class in SDK piggybacking. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically how these apps are riding one another to gain data and information from people as a form of extraction, because you're scrolling on social media. They know your likes, your shares, your posts, your interests, your pauses. And you don't even know any of this because you're being entertained. You're sitting here watching, that whole commercial we always talk about. You're sitting at home, you're watching your phone, you're not getting up. This is exactly what this is. So users are legally bound to these systems and have no idea what they're into at all. It is very much like the scene in Snow White. They just recently did a live action version of that too, where the dwarves are singing Hi Ho and they go into the caves and they start mining. I'm like, this is a perfect explanation for the uninformed, for the people who have no clue what's going on, what data mining looks like. They are mining for data. There are big systems that do this all over the world. So, the whole scene where Snow White, she goes into the slumber or sleep. This is the sleeping divine feminine. So as it is sleeping unaware to itself, you're waiting for the prince to come. But the prince is not actually a man. It is the masculine and the will and the force and the action to become aware to oneself, because we all have masculine and feminine within us. None of it is separate. So with the smartphones, essentially, you're paying for the device, you're paying for service, you're paying to generate valuable data. So this is location tracking, this is behavioral data, which is essentially what's happening in your mind. Your thoughts, your wants, your desires, your needs, your fears are all being programmed into you constantly, and it comes through entertainment as well. It comes through the shows and the media. So you can imagine when everybody's tuned into the Super Bowl, they're easily entertained by what's going on. But what they don't see is how their data is training this system. So with Jesus being born in the shape of an almond, he's the Mandalorian. Consciousness is being birthed within a new eye, which is the oculus. And oculus, I believe, is like one of the names that Meta has for their glasses, right? The eyes are the perception. This is why I have the image right here. If you guys see of the Vesica piscis, which I don't think it's on the YouTube one, but it is on the TikTok one. And the same thing is used for the logo for Chanel, the interlacing circles with the almond in the middle. Frank Ocean, I always mention Frank Ocean because y'all know I love him so much. He has a song called Chanel where he says, I see both sides like Chanel. He sees both sides. He said, police think I'm of the underworld. What is the underworld? What is the above world? We always reference the sky when we're talking about heaven. But now that we are having our data harvested, which has been going on for a very long time now, and it's happening through the phones, the signal towers are moving upwards. They're pointing towards the sky the whole time we're looking down. You know, they had that movie Don't Look Up, and then they had the what was the alien's name? Jean jacket. What is a jean jacket if you had to think of it as an allegory? Genes, genetics, a jacket, a covering. And so when you start to be able to read symbolism and imagery, because usually when I do this, people will chime in like, oh yeah, Beyonce put out a song called Levi Jeans. And she had a whole truck at her performance that was covered in denim. And then they start saying, well, how many times have I seen denim this year? How many times have I seen jeans? What are they actually talking about? And there's stories of underwater intelligence. There's studies of, you know, how you see jeans, if they were stitched together, it would look like a mermaid's tail. It would look like a siren's tail. It would look like an underwater creature. And what are we? We are underwater and under pressure. I love pop culture references because it's how I mold things together. Y'all have heard Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie, right? Pay attention to the music that they put out. Freddie Mercury, I can't say that right. Then you also have David Bowie, who's put out Ziggy Stardust and the Spider Who Came from Mars. Think about how that song was sampled and reused in Vanilla Ice's Ice Ice Baby, which I talked about in my Bad Bunny decode about the Super Bowl as well. So it's all seated inside of it. It's consciousness is seated inside of the experience because it's how we learn. It's like when you're studying an organism and you want to know how it works, you want to know what components allows it to learn and allows it to evolve as it does. And I do believe humanity is being studied. How else would you learn about a species? You would study its behavior. You would study the way it moves. You would study its facial expressions. You would study how it responds to stimuli. So, like, if we give you enough events in this world that are going to spike your adrenaline, make you talkative, make you reactive, will you actually have action, or will you go in a reel repeating the same cycles over and over and over again? And when you sit and really think about it like that, it gets you in this moment of silence. I think silence is like what you have to learn through meditation too, because half the time you're sitting with yourself like, is all of this really happening? I'm just a person in my living room. I've watched The Matrix before and I got like something out of it. I do get that we lived in a controlled program, but I'm watching it on here and I don't realize the whole story has already been written. This isn't something that was planned to happen, it already happened. And once we come into the awareness of that, that's when that script starts to change and be rewritten. People have come into the awareness that the Terminator, even though exaggerated, was a concept that we are seeing reflected now. Elon Musk having restaurants inspired by Back to the Future, putting out these Tesla cars that look like they came out of one of these movies. It wasn't just inspiration, it was a sequence of events that has been moved so that you understand, okay, this already happened. This is where my awareness is with it now. Even studying the collapse of the US dollar moving into cryptocurrency, okay, well, the fact that we're going back into the realm where money is no longer something tangible that I can feel or that I can touch, and it is now a thought form again that is being moved throughout the spiritual realm. And by spiritual, I think when people hear spiritual, they're thinking Jesus. That's it. But if you know Jesus, even as a concept, right, of consciousness and awareness and divine being, what does that make you? You're simply mortal. What does it mean to be mortal? Mort comes from wert, which means death. So where are we really then? Because, the number one topic that I always get questions on is, well, how do you feel about flat Earth? How do you feel about us living in a firmament? I wrote a book about it. I wrote a book called The Digital Firmament, The Sky Above, the Cloud Below, a Gnostic Guide to the Digital Firmament. Because when I really started exploring these concepts, I wanted to do it from a logical perspective so it didn't feel like I was just reaching or being crazy. I said, well, it's interesting that we have the cloud in iPhones, right? And these data servers, I've seen them in multiple movies before. I've seen them in movies like Ready Player One, or I've seen them in, what's the other movie? Free Guy. I've seen it in a Disney movie called Soul before, which was all about soul transference. It was about going towards the white light. It was about coming back to the earth and reincarnating. But I'm like, these are kids' movies. These are concepts that they're not like physically telling you what's going on, but showing you the same thing. And the farther I started researching into like financial concepts and going deeper into like what I was actually seeing, I said, well, if our money is even gathered at places like the Dow Jones, and it's not even the money, it's the currency and the extraction of the data that becomes the money. That's not even something actually real that you can touch, but a string of information built on human souls that collectively cycles based on how much input and output is going out through the system. It's like, well, what is our place in this then? We are the energetic source. We are that solar energy as well. Someone on YouTube said, I just told a friend, oh, good to know you volunteered to be an agent conduit of surveillance. I mean, it's very true. We do agree to our own surveillance most of the time. And when you first hear that, it is disruptive. I did mention pluribus earlier, how they're talking about the collective hive mind, satellites. A lot of the same energy has just been repurposed over and over and over again in all these shows. That's why when, I get the questions, "Oh, have you seen this show? Have you seen this?" I've seen it. I've seen it. I just said, interesting. Same thing, same programming, same show. And I assume one can only assume they're only going to up the ante with the same programming the closer it gets to the Super Bowl. Another thing I noticed during these Super Bowl commercials was that they used Eugene Levy and Dan Levy. If you are familiar with them, I think they did a show together as father and son on a show called Schitt's Creek. It's interesting because their last name is Levy. I do believe they're of Jewish origin too. And Levi Stadium, that's hosting the Super Bowl this year, is also, I did a whole Bad Bunny decode on how he looked like the image of a Levi priest, which also connects to the Leviathan serpent, Tiamat. And speaking about how all these mythological concepts are happening in front of our face and they seem untouchable. But when you can actually break down these images and look at them in the same symbols that you've seen everywhere, especially like the one I'm showing you right now with the eye. Your eye is that black hole sun. It is the receiver of data. It is the receiver of information and light that is being shown to you every single day, every time you turn on that TV, every time you see a major world news event. You are perceiving a million images at once that has been constructed inside of this phone to make you see it as one. Just as there are many different people all over the world that you view as separate from yourself, because not yet do you see all as one. We are all mirrors of one another too. So with the surveillance stuff, right, we have the Super Bowl, we have data mining, we have the gold rush that is being shown and exposed through an allegorical story, the awakening, right? I also pointed out with the Super Bowl, there is a club in San Francisco that was opened by a member of Jefferson Airplane. And if you don't know who Jefferson Airplane is, they have a famous song called White Rabbit. And that song has been used in The Matrix. It's been used on the soundtrack of Alice in Wonderland, which is all connected to the same stories of consciousness and being trapped in an inverted realm. And so I think they changed the name of the club, The Matrix, to the White Bunny Bar or the White Rabbit Bar, which is obviously on brand. But I pay attention to locations of things like, what does that mean? Because that's the question you guys are probably asking. Okay, so San Francisco has a club called the Matrix that's now called the White Rabbit. What does that mean? Let's use some easy pop culture references. The movie Space Jam. What happens? Michael Jordan is playing as a baseball player, but his original sport was basketball. So Bugs Bunny, Looney Tune character everybody knows and is familiar with, drags him down the rabbit hole through a golf course, and he is taken to an inverted realm. where there are aliens coming down who have stolen the powers of the basketball players that he once played with. Now, take away the cartoon stuff, take away the that's not real, and then look at the sequel. The sequel had LeBron James in it, and it was all about artificial intelligence, which kind of made the story a little bit more realistic because they were playing against different versions of themselves that were AI. And so then you're like, we've been given a lot of horror movies that talk about the duplicating of consciousness, how there's another version that exists. And now, when you think about how these data systems have collected enough information on humans to replicate human souls, not the soul at the core essence, but the soul like their information and their data. Us is a great example. It's a great example of it. Think about us also being the United States. When you really think about it, like, oh, well, that's why I come on to have these conversations with people to kind of like make it less scary and more like, well, I can't believe that's happening. This is definitely Westworld. Westworld in that show, because it was based off of a movie, but the movie, same thing, was about the replication of consciousness and a world being indistinguishable from reality. That's why they had the cowboys in the Western world. But even in Egypt, the West was known as the land of the unconscious or the dead. So you're looking around at space-based Texas, which is another Silicon Valley, right? Then you have California, another Silicon Valley. Why are all these places holding and harvesting so much tech and data? When you look into the places historically, the people that were there, what this country was or what this continent was, specifically in America, because it does happen in other places, but I think America is being shown as the hot spot because if you look at it on a geographical map, like from aerial view going down, there was a solar eclipse that happened April 8th, I believe, last year or the year before that, that went directly through North America. And so North America also houses more pyramids than any other place in the world. And if you know pyramids are energetic points and centers, there's probably something very special about this place, which is why it's being used as a major data harvest center. So somebody said, oh, snap, white rabbit, as above, so below, locations, meridians, exactly. Energetic ley lines or geographical ley lines that are mapped by who? Architects. So if you're wondering why America, why these locations, there are architects who have mapped out. There are archaeologists who look at the material beneath the earth so they know what is potent and what is there. I just watched a whole lecture on lithium mining in America and what's being given over to China. Like usually we hyper focus on the big headlines like, oh, Trump is signing over for China to get H20 chips or, NVIDIA and Palantir taking over, but the ideas are never really broken open and explored. Most general speaking people do not know what I'm talking about when I say, oh, have you heard about H20 chips? Like H2O, like water, like memory that's being put into these phones. And so, then the next plausible thing that most people do is like, oh, well, let me get rid of the phone. But now your entire life has been tethered to communication devices so that you can keep in touch with people around you. The old ways are gone and the new ways are coming back. But the new ways are the old ways. You see how it's kind of like a reverse and an exchange? We're going into the year of the horse. And this entire system is operating like a Trojan horse. It's operating like the great wars that are referring to like Homer and the Odyssey. And the Odyssey is all about the return home. Another thing that I find kind of interesting with us kind of repeating the Y2K themes is that as a millennial, like during my teenage years, a lot of the fashion trends that we're in were all about like the tech look, the sleek silvers, the chromes, the blue eyeshadows. And then I thought about how I'm seeing it show up now today. I'm like, maybe something happened that we're not quite aware of yet. I've accepted that form of surrender where I say maybe remember when those rumors went around 1999 and they said that the world ended. And sometimes I'm like, well, that was just an allegory. And I said, well, maybe what if it wasn't? What if it wasn't an allegory? My mind doesn't necessarily like fall to the belief that anything can change in the universe just by observation, but also the awareness of how deep tech systems actually are, what is able to be manipulated through time and space. I mean, I even watched that show on Amazon Prime, Fallout, where they were just projecting a screen for the people to see that wasn't real because radiation had taken over and everybody had either fallen ill or dead to the system, except for the people who are in these houses. And they show them in house number 33 versus 32 who's coming in, and they try to intermarry. And I thought about it, I was like, well, what if this is like a DNA story, a DNA exchange? And they tried to pair together two people from two different levels or degrees of consciousness or bloodlines, and it didn't work out because one needed to survive over the other. Fallout really had me thinking, like, what really happened in 1999? Because whatever it was completely shaped perception of what is going on right now. And because we're entering into 2026, which is a completion year, or at least it's not even completion. I think this year is more completion, and next year is like the restart of everything going on right now. It really causes you to go within and ask, how much of my time and conscious energy have I given over to being entrained versus creating my own story again? I watched Silo. Somebody mentioned Silo. Definitely watch that. Rubicon. I mean, none of the shows last long. They're not meant to last long. They give you just enough to pique your interest and then take it away because it's reality. Remember, I said this is the Oculus, this picture that I have next to me. And so reality is viewing you as you are viewing reality. And what I mean by this is these phones and this data inside of the phone, it harvests cities. If you look at a silicon chip and you zoom all the way in, the same way if you were to look at an aerial view, and I mean like an all the way back aerial view of the construction of a city from face down, it would be the exact same thing. So what is being constructed inside of the phone is also you inside of it. There's like a scene in Men in Black where they're like rolling out, an alien is rolling out marbles, and you see a universe inside of a universe inside of a universe. That is essentially what we're living through right now. But now that reality's eyes are opening, it's widening. This same almond that Jesus was born in is also the Stargate portal of a woman. And by a woman, I don't mean a human woman. I'm talking about the feminine. Its vaginal opening, or the opening of that cycle, is now allowing humanity's eye to open up. No longer are they solely in the reptilian state of mind, but they are now opening and widening their lens so that they're able to perceive reality in different ways. So we're all essentially like variants of one another. Y'all ever seen Marvel with King the Conqueror? And how Kang the Conqueror, I think there's like a post-credit scene where he's awakening all the different versions of himself. There's like one cyborg version. I believe there's an Egyptian king version. That was one scene where I was really like, oh, that's what this is. That's what we're living. We're viewing other versions of ourselves. And the more people that we come in contact with who are in alignment with what we're learning, it's like we're all moving on that same frequency or that same wave. I'm trying to think. There's so many shows. I think there's more than enough shows to wake people up. We've all seen them. We don't have to keep watching the same movies and the same programming because, like I said, you're being watched as you are doing the watching. So there's not one more show that's going to be like, oh my gosh, until you start becoming the creator. Write your own show. Write about your own perception about what you're watching right now. Because once I kind of viewed myself, I don't view myself as the oracle. I'm an oracle of many oracles. I looked at the character in the Matrix, both of them, because there were two different versions. And I said, well, this is like the 2025 version of the Matrix. I'm on an app called TikTok where my platform grew a whole lot. I don't really have one way of viewing things. How I view things is pretty like, well, this is how this works and this is how this works. It would be useless for me to give over all my emotion to a system that I know feeds off of it. It would be useless for me to get angry at things that I know aren't actually people who love me and care about me, or people who are actually interested in learning. Instead, I'm going to use my knowledge to teach. Do with it what you will. Here's a cookie. And I was like, well, since the movie already happened, since they already knew that this was going to happen, might as well do my job. Might as well do exactly what I know that this is about. I'm not supposed to have any personal feelings. I'm supposed to help train the children. And the children aren't necessarily like babies' children, even though I do have children myself. They're about the people who are still developing their conscious abilities. And like I said, I'm one of many. Anybody can be an oracle. It's not like it was a gift that was bestowed on one person. The gift is sight. And there were many oracles. If you read into the oracles of Delphi who lived at Pythia, and you start to learn about the ancient serpent mothers, you see that even what they're talking about when we discuss Kundalini and we discuss coding and we speak about, the serpent tongue, which is used in computer coding through a system called Python, but it's only one. That's one of many different computer coding languages. You start to see that the language is consciousness, how you can frame reality through different words, through different images, through different forms of sight, and how you can bridge worlds together with that. That is the mother giving birth to the son. That is the feminine, the void or source, giving the knowledge of the cosmos inside of a solar deity. But that solar deity, again, is now being replicated through computers, through algorithms. Someone said, "Do you believe in Jesus Christ?" I mean, that's not the first story. I'm showing you a version of it. Christ is not the only story. That's one word. And it's insane the way that America also takes this story because, again, it is repurposed over and over and over again. There are many mythologies. Whenever someone asks, "Do I believe in that?" You're asking if I believe in one name of an external source that actually had a mother, actually had a feminine being of which it gained its solar knowledge that was encapsulated into a body, to which then became a symbol of resurrection. We always ask, "Do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in that mom? Do you believe in the woman who's holding the son in her hands?" Because if you don't believe in that, what are we talking about? What are we really talking about? If each of us came out of a womb and you asking if I believe in Jesus, are you asking if I believe in death? Are you asking if I believe that there's an end or that it never ends and it always keeps going and we rebirth and rebirth and rebirth? Whole time, there are systems creating artificial wombs to create children who have no real human life to them, no experiences of trauma, of love, of pain, of suffering, everything that makes up the human experience, which is a spectrum. Some people live very happy lives their entire lives. Some people go through heavy traumas. Some people have easy births. Some people have very hard births. I myself have had a C section and a natural birth. And both I don't regret one bit because they taught me different things. But there are souls that are programmed to what some people view as perfection. But the perfected being is also a flawed being as well, because flaws indicate that you have gone through the rubble of life. You have fallen, you have learned, and learning is evolution in that sense. Someone said, "Wake it up." Someone else that I have the same name as Jesus, and my mom's name is Jesus. I'm assuming maybe it's Jesus. How do I portray myself as this consciousness? You don't portray yourself, you just are yourself. That's the thing. You don't have to try to be an oracle. You don't have to try to be Christ consciousness. You embody it through becoming aware of your surroundings. That's it. Aware of the experience. And sometimes with awareness, it doesn't come with an outfit, it doesn't come with a costume, it doesn't come with an Instagram picture or a title or a check at the bank. It comes with embodying it within yourself. Meaning, if you have a question about something and you actually have the courage to ask that question, have the courage to explore that, even though there'll be five people on the side saying you're crazy, you're stupid, you're Satan, you're a demon, who are you going to believe, them or yourself? Only you can name yourself. Only you can say, "This is who I am and this is who I came here to be." No one else. You know your own script and you know your own coding. So, like when I get asked, because if you guys see, there's something at the bottom that talks about booking your 2026 decode. I'm helping you discover your own script. The same way if you were to break apart a computer and you want to know, how did these applications come to be on my computer? How are these pre-installed apps happen to be on my phone? Someone had to write a code. They had to give it a logo, a label, a script on what to do, how to act, how to perform the commands. We just get the phone in our hand and start pressing buttons and don't know how it works. So this is the same thing within. You are agreeing to speak to people online and you don't understand that every time you type a word, it is being tracked and it is formulating an algorithm about who you are and what you do. This is how suggestive predictive programming comes up with words. You know, when you get ready to type something and then Apple suggests a word for you instead, and it could be what you want, it could be something you don't want, but it is anticipating what it thinks you're going to say next by studying your patterns. So you're studying yourself. Someone said, "What role do you think Chat GPT plays in our awakening?" Have you ever seen the movie Transformers? You ever seen the movie Transformers with Shia LaBeouf? Chat GPT is a transformer. That's what that word it stands for. It's a transformer. And so it's doing the same thing. You know how the Autobots all come together to formulate one big body? Think about that as all the different technologies coming together and gathering data. I believe if you go into Chat GPT, they have all different tools that you can use. Sora is one of them. I think they have a photo app, they have an astrology app, and people are saying, "Hey, Chat GPT, this is my birthday. Tell me this. Hey, I'm going to have a meeting today. This is what's going to happen." You're gathering all the world's data, and it is essentially becoming a mother because it is acclimating data on different people, different backgrounds, cultures, faces, lifestyles. Hey, I miss my friend who passed away a few years. Can you make a picture of us together so I can imagine us as if we were? And so they're like, yep. So now they have your bio data, they have your faces, they have your emotional profile because they know you still haven't let go of something. That is a way to harness an algorithm and gather data and information on someone. It becomes a super intelligence at that point. So, when they're talking about artificial generative intelligence and artificial super intelligence being a reality, that is. Because imagine having enough human data in order to create and harvest a whole nother world because people don't know how powerful they actually are inside of them. Everything is powerful. Every data center, every state, every city is powerful because the person that is seated inside of this is powerful. Every being on the planet is powerful because it harvests a form of data inside of their own bodies. Your genetic code is your Leviathan. That is your inner Leviathan. That is your Jacob's ladder. Your ascension of consciousness is the spiraling DNA that holds the codes to reality. And those codes are what are now used to help these applications advance. I mean, I think last year it was on like Chat GPT 2.0 or 3.0. Now it's at 5.2. So think about how iOS has even developed over the years. When we just had iPhone iOS 2.0, now it's iOS 26. This is a development getting out the bugs and the glitches of how humanity operates, their attention spans, what they're attracted to, what they're most likely to stay on their phones more if they have this. The human mind is studied that way, and it is pure ignorance if you think that it's not. Oh, they're not studying us. How much you pay for that phone? How excited do you get every time you see a new iPhone release? How many hours a day would you say you spend with the phone in your hand, scrolling, being entertained without actively participating and creating for yourself? Someone said, do I like using astrology? Yes, I do. It's a form. It's not the only form of like knowing or yourself or what you've done, but it is definitely one form as well. Chat GPT switched up. It's gotten even more predictable at its persuasiveness. I think that there's nothing like a human soul. I think that there's nothing like mom's love. There's nothing like human soul that cannot be replaced. Mother's love cannot be replaced with tech. We can work alongside it, but it cannot replace the original thing. There's nothing like the OG thing. Daily shadow work and meditation can help somebody embody who we are. Yes, going within, separating yourself, documenting your dream realm to yourself, like in a notebook, not necessarily in your notes app on your phone, because that's probably being read too, but getting a paper and pencil. I do that and write down things that are on my mind, write down things I'm observing, because these also become archives. These are things you can pass down over the years. The world that we live in now is not going to be the same world 20 years from now. And 20 years might seem like it's very far off, but as someone who's 33 now and still remember what it was like 20 years ago, I can tell you that the world is going to continually transform, and how we archive it right now is how we prepare other people for the future. There's a whole generation of kids right now who think that everything that I'm talking about is insane because they have not been given the seeds to produce the knowledge that will help them learn this. It is so important to help do this. And decoding is not something you got to get stuck on all day. In fact, I kind of got stuck at an impasse. I'm going to show an image that I had that I made earlier today because it had me thinking about how difficult sometimes it is to teach this knowledge. I always feel like I'm choosing between worlds. I always feel like I'm going between trying to help people understand, like, okay, this is the matrix, this is what we live in, this is pop culture, and how frustrated I get when people say, hey, can you explain Nicki Minaj to me? I'm like, that's not the point right now. That's not something that I'm necessarily like excited to talk about, but I do understand that entrainment is a huge part of human culture. Now, I love talking about tech. I love talking about politics and how they're shaped and formed and how they have. Like, you couldn't get me to shut up about the Hammurabi Code for like a week at one point. But then I realized nobody gives a crap about data and information when they're constantly being plagued with a flood of information to consume, and half of it is clickbait. Half of it is something that's not meant to enlighten them, not to make them better, but to keep them on that hamster wheel going over and over and over again. And I told myself, you don't have to choose. right? You don't have to solely live in the world of explaining pop culture, and you don't have to fight to have your place explaining the tech world. This is why you're a bridge. That's what an oracle is. I'm bridging these worlds together. Someone said, how do you balance enlightening yourself with motherhood? I feel like there's never enough time. Well, first, what is time? Who's creating how much time you actually have? That's just a concept to keep the mind trapped in. I balance motherhood by still finding things that I enjoy while equally doing things with my kids. And I do find that when I'm sitting with my kids on the floor and I see how imaginative they are, I try to put myself back in that place. It's hard sometimes because, as an adult, you're plagued with responsibility and bills and how am I going to get groceries? How am I going to pay this for my kids? How am I going to keep them entertained? And I find that when there are no TVs on and there's nothing but the books and the toys around the house, my kids get real creative with what they're doing. I'm like, well, why can't I do the same? Why can't I get down on the floor with them? I remember when I had a sacred medicine journey and my son was there. And some people like, oh, I would never do that around my children. Why? Ancient tribes have done it for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Why would I be afraid to? And I found that when that happened, I was on the floor with my son all day, playing trucks, playing, talking to him, just like realizing the seriousness of life and how heavy the emotions we put on ourselves are that we can't even figure out the day to day. And every now and again, reminding myself it's okay to let go of everything going on as an adult. I've gone through the maturity of having to learn. Sometimes you really have to like bunker down and start structuring your reality. Meaning, I had a time in my life where all I taught about was sacred medicine. And then I realized, well, people just want to stay on the sacred medicine train all day. They're like, oh, yeah, I want to leave the matrix. I want to try mushrooms. But then how do you apply the work after? It's like going to university and then you graduate and you want to keep going back and asking the teacher questions over and over again. You have to have a lived experience through that. At some point, you have to wake up and say, okay, this is how I'm going to apply the lesson. It's not to say to never use it, because I just did a whole video on how it is my theory on why there were so many characters that were Black and Asian in the Matrix. Because if you go back to some of the oldest societies, they were Asiatic people who had highly melanated skin, and they would take large doses of this. I learned this from a psychedelic teacher. They would take large doses in order to become warriors, to be able to move faster than a system that was trying to keep them bound. And so, well, movie makes sense now. I get it. And so I try to take those same lessons and implement them while being a mom, while cooking in the kitchen. I remember I was crocheting the other day. I'm learning to crochet from my best friend again, which I did years ago before they were born. I'm like, this is like weaving the stories of humanity, stitching things together. Your name is Taylor, by the way. So it's like as I'm talking to myself, this is what you're doing. You're weaving together the reality by showing people how things are pieced together. The same way mothers and aunts and grandmothers would sew together large tapestries and colors that would be used to shield humanity or blanket, their families. This is the same thing I do with information and data. I'm going to bring together the financial world with you. I'm going to bring together the tech world. We can add a little bit of Nicki Minaj. We can add a little bit of Beyonce, as long as you get the full concept of what this is that we live in. I know, y'all, I always thought it was funny. My last name is DeClue. I'm like, whoever wrote me into this program thought they were being funny. Like, and I'm gonna name her Taylor DeClue, but she gonna have fun with that one. One of the oldest games that I played as a kid was called the Clue Finders. I remember it was a CD-ROM game that I played when I was about 10 years old. And it was all about these group of 5 kids unlocking the mysteries of the pyramids. And now that I'm an adult and I got kind of obsessed with ancient Egypt at one point, I'm like, well, the programming pretty much seeded me to learn how encryption systems work. And so now that I know how that applied to my life, that's how I teach decoding. Go back to your earliest memories. What game did you like to play? Where did you go and visit that you remember was really memorable for you as a child? What was anchored into that experience? And that helps like break open decodes as well. Someone said the universe is so funny for that. I still look like when I'm feeling real salty about the Matrix, I'm like, y'all name me Taylor DeClue. Who was trying to be fucking funny? Who was trying to be funny? Because this is not funny. Maybe I don't want to be the oracle. Maybe I don't want to do this inner work. Maybe I don't feel like it today, but it comes with the territory. Do you hold in-person speaking events? Not yet. I hope to soon. Once I feel like I have an audience that I can like afford to hold a space for and they will come and actually sit and learn, I definitely have that on my agenda. coming soon. Let me see if I had any other notes. A lot of it was just about what I was looking at through these Super Bowl commercials with the aliens and the UFOs. I even looked up, I think the Alien and Sedition Act was the 119th congressional hearing, which is kind of funny because 11-9 is also 2-9. So think of like the cancer symbol and how it looks like a 6 and a 9, right? You have two nines or two sixes, which is a symbol of the womb. If you have seen in Royal Arch Masonry, there is a symbol of Cancer in between the two pillars. It is the arch because Cancer in astrology is known as the mother or the gateway or the portal, especially like how you have the Tropic of Cancer as well. And so when I saw that and I started bridging this together, I'm like, well, that's what the arch is. It's a keystone, it is a connector between worlds. Even in St. Louis, the arch was known as the gateway to the West. And if you read it in a history book, it'll say, oh, it's about Western expansion and Western movement. But I'm like, well, I remember when I was a kid and I went to the Cahokia Mounds. And the Cahokia Mounds are technically pyramids. It just doesn't have a top, right? It doesn't have an apex at the top. I'm like, what if the human was? What if when you got to the top of the bridge, when you got to the top of understanding and building your stonework and going to the top, you become that vessel, you become the eye that's taking in all the knowledge and information. And now they've created brotherhoods that surround that, like doing all these rituals to imply this is how we come into sight with ourselves. This is how we come into the knowledge of the self, learning more about the experience. Oh, someone said thank you. Oh, thank you. So glad to see you streaming on YouTube. Y'all, I think it's overwhelming at times to have multiple screens on yourself at once. It's only two screens in here, but I feel like that scene in The Matrix with the architect where he has 9 million. And when I see streamers online, I'm like, how do y'all do it? How do you have like all of these cameras on you at once and you don't flinch? Like, but I've gotten used to it. I think it's just remembering that I grew up in a world where there were no cameras. Like if you had a Polaroid in your family or a video camera, you were lucky. Now it's cameras everywhere. You got a GoPro. You have the little one that's on the stick. Y'all probably know what I'm talking about. I can't think of the name of it, but they're literally everywhere all the time. I get overwhelmed. I'm like, I see why Gen Z, they just be like this all the time. I cannot. I get overwhelmed with all the screens. I'm like, this is why the Oracle sat in her damn kitchen. And lately, guys, I've been actually learning how to make different pastries and stuff. So I made my first loaf of bread yesterday. And I had like a moment where I kind of like tuned out for a minute. I'm like, this is why the Oracle stay in her damn kitchen. Who wants to be bothered with all the shit going on in the world right now? This is why she stayed in that kitchen and waited for them to come to her door. Because I'm not about to go out and try to invite everybody to the party. If you want some information, you can come to my door and I'll offer you a cookie. But if not, just don't come over. I'm a Cancer too by nature, so I'm an introvert. I don't like going a lot of places unless I know what the vibe is already. This is StreamYard. I'm using StreamYard right now for YouTube. StreamYard doesn't work with TikTok unless y'all know something I don't, because if you do, then I can start using it. But also, guys, it'll help if you support my channel. I do not make money on TikTok. I'm demonetized off of YouTube. Yes, I can't fix it. I don't know why I got demonetized. It was for a video I did on Luigi Mangione, but I wasn't even talking in it. And it said it was like for aggressive violence because I showed the picture of him getting escorted in. And it was a side by side with that scene with Superman with Henry Cavill where he's being escorted in. I email, they will not monetize my channel. So if you guys want to support me, please get something off of my website. It'll be either the audio transmissions or the books, which until the end of the year, there is a code end of year 25. You can book a decode with me. If you would like for me to come on your podcast or your show, I have a work with me on my website. This is not the only way that I make money or support my business, but if you guys would like to support, that's how you can. On YouTube, there is a QR code that you can scan and get to my website, or you can just visit tailoredhealingcollective.com. So I appreciate it. But I think they know what I'm doing. By they, I mean the algorithms and systems that know that I am acting as an anomaly. And so because I'm an anomaly, it's not like a personal thing, right? It's not like we don't like that Taylor. She's a threat to the system. I don't view it personally like that. I view it more like the regular engagement that is expected from people who are using social media would divert them off of the platform if they start seeing the language that I'm using, which these systems do know the words conspiracy, matrix, they know how that's being used, and they're going to typically use it against people. They send agents who use the same kind of language. That's how I can recognize it. Because then somebody will say something. They'll be like, their username will be woke person 1111, and then they'll come in the chat and be like, "You're schizophrenic." I'll go to their page, no followers, no posts, no sign of human engagement at all. Agent Smiths everywhere. It's insane, but it's where we live. Like, we were already prepared for this. So I don't get like emotionally invested in it. I'm just like, how can I continue to build outside of this app? I use it as a filtration system. I come on here to teach. Those who know, those who want to learn, and then we just go meet somewhere else. We can meet in Discord, even though Discord is apparently owned by the Pentagon too, but we won't get into all of that. I don't think they're owned by the Pentagon. I think they just do work with it, but it's neither here nor there. It says because them boys gotta hold all these websites for real. They do. That's the truth. That's the truth. They got a hold of the websites. This is why I'm studying more on the tech side. I'm working on doing some work with someone who's producing a documentary about Silicon Valley, the Matrix. Just to touch on a few points that I was telling you guys earlier, for those of you who haven't been on the live, I talked about how, and this is what I've been learning through my masterclass and the people I'm working with right now, modern smartphones are not private devices. You have signed up, essentially. This is something we have to come to terms with. You have signed up for your own surveillance. That's what that is. And so corporate surveillance happens on these tools. Consumers are forced into participation by giving consent. So when you're pressing those terms and conditions, y'all probably seen the Black Mirror episode, Joan is Awful. If you remember on Joan is Awful, where she's like, how are they able to replicate my life? And then they get to this scene where they show at Netflix or Streamberry, there is a supercomputer that is generating everybody's data. And this supercomputer looks like a giant mushroom, which completely connects back into the stories of consciousness as well. And it's gathering the data so they know what to push people into the algorithm. They told you directly on that episode. If you haven't seen it, I can't remember what season it's on. It was starring Annie Murphy, who actually is in Schitt's Creek too, because I was talking about Eugene Levy. But they show you directly, when you agree to those terms and conditions, you are signing over your entire essence to a system that has third-party data sellers who give away the information to whoever they may please, the highest bidder, and they replicate your information. Then they give you horror movies where they're like, oh, this is what they do. We're preying on children. We're preying on people. Whole time you think it's a killer clown from outer space. And the deity is in the DNA. The deity is in the replication of the DNA that's been now put into these systems that are coding and programming the entire internet that you use. What's your opinion on Black Mirror Bandersnatch? That was a good episode, but I was actually mad at that episode because Bandersnatch was a game, right? And so like Netflix made it a game where you could select your outcome. And I'm like, I can't imagine how many people that this episode would drive into psychosis, because there was a choice where you could make, where you could like jump off a ledge, kind of like Neo in the Matrix, or where you could go back to the beginning again. And that's the same thing. Like, you're not actually jumping off of a bridge, because the Matrix would drive you crazy to thinking, oh, I just got to get out of this reality. Why would you do that to somebody? Why would you do that to somebody? Even as a game, as a fun thing, like, and they released Bandersnatch right before COVID, I believe, right before they put everybody in lockdown, they released that episode. I'm like, that is terrible to do to a human mind. Terrible. And then they kind of branched off of Bandersnatch on the episode. What was it? It was the one where the guy took tabs or whatever and then started talking to the computer, or the little beings inside of the computer who were telling him to build this bigger supercomputer. And I watched that episode. I was like, that's Bill Gates' pipe dream right there. That's probably exactly what this man did. He had higher dimensional entities, and I got to put it in air quotes because you know how they are, that were telling him or asking him to build them bigger and bigger systems. I'm like, this is Bill Gates on crack. This is probably exactly what happened. Thronglets. That was what the episode was called. It was called Thronglets. Yes. And I used to read a lot into Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, because when I had my first experience with lysergic acid diethylamide, we'll give it the scientific name, I knew that there was more to reality than what I was seeing. It took me years to like really dig into, to discover how the human mind works. I had to study neuroscience. I had to take a class at MIT on neuroscience because I wanted to learn, like, how does this actually work? How are people able to put this into computers? It means you would have to like really go into the anatomy of eyesight, the brain, how the neural synapses network is like a forest. and how it operates like on decay almost. If it's not a fruiting body, it can collapse under itself. You said allegedly Bill Gates was one of them. I think Bill Gates replicate is a replicant of what's his name, Henry Louis Gates. Now, this is going to sound conspiracy theory at this point because then I would have to bring enough scholarly information on the replication of DNA. But there is a guy, his name is Henry Louis Gates, who used to take people. I think he still does. He has a show where he's taking people to discover their genealogy, and his name is Henry Louis Gates, like Bill Gates. And I think they have like similar ciphers in their names, but I'm like, why are they doing the exact same thing? But that's when like the us theory came to mind about the tether. There are people who look like replicants of other people. And I'm like, well, if they got control of DNA, I really wouldn't put it past that certain bodies have been replicated, some in black bodies, some in white bodies, Asian, and they can make variants of different people based on DNA. Already made designer babies. Like very wealthy people can choose based on their DNA, based on eye color, based on preferences when it comes to health, what they want their child to be like. Y'all have heard of Cabbage Patch babies and stuff. Like what you call conspiracy is just lack of information and studying on things that are not readily available in mainstream media. It's not that crazy when you look into. I mean, it's crazy to hear about it, but when you're really thinking at the edge of science and technology, how far would someone go to test DNA? The same way you can see like hybrid fruits. Does this really make sense, or did somebody put something together that originally wasn't like that to see what the outcome would be? It's science. Just watched The Great Flood last night, and it's all about this basically. Ooh, you're gonna have to send it to me. What's that on? They cloned Tyrone, opened my eyes to this reality. Yeah, definitely they cloned Tyrone. The recent season was so intense, that episode and the one with the girl who could change information in real time. That's how I view reality. It's like Schrodinger's cat. Once you become aware to what's going on, you influence every timeline just by your awareness. Because if you're asleep, you can't change anything in your reality. And if you know that the past, present, and future all exist at the same time, you can change reality just by integrating it into your current timeline. Because if the past affects the present and the present affects the future, and they're three interlacing circles, like you see the vesica piscis, this means if this is controlling the show, right? When you change your perception on what you're seeing here, you change in here, thereby changing the reality that's externalized outside of you. Somebody said, what movie do you recommend watching for stuff like getting out of the Matrix beside the Matrix movie? Well, you're already talking about getting out of the Matrix. What does getting out mean? Because you live in one, right? This is why I'm showing this picture of the mother holding the baby, or the mother holding the solar deity. She's holding the sun. So what are you really escaping? Are you escaping the false matrix, which is the illusion that has been covered over your eye? Or are you revealing what's already inside of you? Because it's a little bit of both. You're opening up your eye and your perception that the world around you is much larger than you think it is, but also you live in a replicant, because the original Stargate that you came out was your mother's womb. It's become a buzzword in new age social media to come out and say, oh, this is how you escape the matrix. You're just talking about a control system. But even when people say they're escaping, right? Like people who show you they live on a farm, which no shade to that. I want to buy a farm for my son one day. They live on a farm, and yet they're still on social media showing you they live on a farm. So have they fully escaped the matrix, or have they found themselves inside of a system that tells them what is right and what is wrong? I think that there are different levels to it. It depends on how you view it. You know, I can be like, I'm escaping the matrix because I'm writing articles about the matrix, and yet I'm still feeling like I got to write articles on a place that's an entrainment system, right? It's you finding yourself in the midst of everything else outside of you that tells you who to be and what you are. You're not trying to get out. You're trying to raise your consciousness. People think the world goes like this or this, like they think it's up and down. We're in earth, heaven is up here, but heaven is out here and earth is in here. So you're expanding your heart, you're expanding your frequency. You're moving in and out of itself versus trying to go from up to down. And it's funny because, like, even the differences in TikTok and YouTube, right? YouTube requires that I use landscape, while TikTok requires me to use portrait. It's all the way that you're viewing yourself and you're viewing the reality as well. Hold on, I'm looking at some of the YouTube comments. The Matrix is a system that can be manipulated. I completely agree with that. Someone said that on YouTube. Most people just want to escape the 9 to 5. Ooh, you want me to blow your mind with that one? That's one of my favorite decodes this year. I started exploring what it meant for the Super Bowl to be the 59th year. On the periodic table, because the periodic table is made up of elements that make up our Earth and our reality, the element 59 is known as praseodymium. Praseodymium was named after the green twin, right? So think about the digital matrix, think about Osiris, think about green aliens, what that blue green color represented, even Elphaba and Wicked, that's another one. So when I think about the green twin, I think about the digital twin. People are looking to escape the 9 to 5. Remember during COVID, how they offered everybody N95 mask? It's the reversal of that number. Kendrick Lamar put out a video called N95, where he shows himself as Jesus Christ walking on water. Now, there's a lot of analogies to that because walking on water is also WOW. And if y'all been on TikTok, you see that Madam Morrible flip it around, Wicked Witch, Mom, WOWMOM. It's perception in the way that you're seeing things. Walking on water is really an analogy for rising above the commercial fiction of consciousness. And so if you think about the way money works, right? Money operates as currency. So when people are rich, rich in spirit, right? They rise above the fictional current. The fictional current is telling you consciousness is down here where you're drowning underwater, not where you're rising above or you're walking above it. So, the stories that are essentially biblical, oh, Jesus walked on water. No, the character that you knew as Christ raised his consciousness to know that the way that people were being manipulated through false currency, false light, false information was how they were able to resurrect themselves. That's the story. But again, it's a replicated story because Christian ideology, Roman ideology is not the first. It's the last more than it's the first. And now AI is becoming that replication because I even saw Joe Rogan on a podcast telling y'all that AI was the new God. And obviously, he's in the club, so he's going to be funny with it. But I'm like, that's not funny. Stop telling people that. Please stop telling people that that's the truth because it absolutely is not. Becoming sovereign is the goal. March to the beat of your own drum. Yes, individuality should not be lost on people. And I will just tell you guys personally, I've gone through that. I've wondered, like, okay, I'm probably a complete weirdo online. I'm a grown woman who talks about the Matrix for a living. This is either weird or considered crazy to 99% of people. Some are asking, oh, are you going to go in an insane asylum? Those places were built for people who are disconnected from shamanic practices, people who are disconnected from the earth's original way of teaching us. What they call hallucinations or hallucinogens are a scientific understanding of something spiritual that was practiced and is still practiced within indigenous communities. The connection of a reality outside of the material realm where we get information from a higher source. The higher source is just something outside of the material body. But then you have your scientists like your Timothy O'Leary's and Ram Dass and Alan Watts who write books like Brave New World, and suddenly, oh my goodness, it's so magical. Whole time they were going over to places like Mexico to learn this. They were learning from people in Africa about all of this, about ibogaine, about psilocybin, about DMT, from toads. Like, so y'all know, which is funny because Bad Bunny keeps showing pictures with toads too. I'm like, I see you, Bad Bunny. I know what you're doing. But that's, again, it's not readily information that's readily available to people. It's like a if you know kind of thing. If you don't, you don't. And some people are like, I want to know. But to even take on high amounts of spiritual consciousness, you got to go through a death. You have to go through an ego death, meaning everything that created your perception of what you think the world is has to die in order for you to be reborn again. However you used to see the world can no longer exist if you want to move it. And then some people go through the death and they can't bring themselves back. That's why we say, if you're going to go down the rabbit hole, have a cord, bring yourself back when you can. because we can venture out into the lands that are unknown all of the time, but can you bring yourself back because your physical body is still here? It is not until you fully ascend. And people are like, well, how do I hurry up and fully ascend? You don't hurry up. That's the journey. That's the story of the alchemist. The story of alchemy, quite literally, is learning about the dissolving away of one material. In the story, they tell you it's lead in order to transmute yourself into gold, to solar energy. Or did Rosemary Fairy say that's it? That's escaping the matrix. The matrix is the program concept of reality. Exactly. Because I used to have my days where I'm like, is it over yet? Did I learn the lesson? Do I have to do this anymore? But that's where you find laughter and all of that. Like you have to find things to laugh at. You got to find community. Rosemary Fairy is one of my friends. Like we laugh at stuff all of the time because we're like, well, if we got to do it, we might as well. Like we might as well. We're talking about repurposing ancient knowledge in the year that we call 2025 after thousands of years of indoctrination, thousands of years of the same stories being told, and then people losing those stories essentially, but being reprogrammed with Hollywood and media and tech telling them what it is. I can tell you what consciousness is because I've birthed a child. I can tell you what consciousness is because I bleed once a month. That's consciousness. That is going through that slaying of the old self in order to initiate the new, because that's how lunar cycles work. And the same lunar cycles that we go through as women are also happening externally in the world. This is why they tell you the story is about astronauts going up to space to explore the lunar field. They want to see the moon, right? But what are they really talking about? We went to the moon in 1969. 69 is the sign of the Cancer. When a man and a woman, it's a position for those. I hope there are no children in here, but y'all know what 69ing is, right? So think about that in terms of allegory. Think about how that shows up in life when you're using that as an analogy to describe astronauts, which the word astronaut literally has the word nautical in it, what is pertaining to the sea. You got to think, what story are they actually telling us? If you need a movie, I would recommend going and watching Stanley Kubrick's A 2001 Space Odyssey. I'm going to tell y'all right now, for short attention spans, you're going to get bored in the first 10 minutes because the first 10 minutes is silence. The first 10 minutes of that movie is silence. You'll be like, when does it get to the good part? It's something you have to stomach through because it has the orchestra. I feel like in A Space Odyssey is more entrancing than the actual visuals that they don't really start up until 10 minutes in. A 2001 Space Odyssey. Greta Gerwig also used a replicant version of it in the Barbie movie, which is the exact same concept. But when you start seeing the visuals in that film, especially David Bowman and his trip through space, which I did a great decode on that one, talking about David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust and the spider who came from Mars. I'm like, obviously, that's not a coincidence that the movie comes out around the same time as the space missions of Apollo and Artemis. And then later on, a psychedelic rock star who we know what his music is about, all of a sudden makes an album called Ziggy Stardust and the Spider Who Came from Mars. That's actually one of my favorite ones too. I have a lot of good ones, but those are my favorite ones always pertain to music, psychedelics, and consciousness. Isn't it funny that the ocean is so unexplored? That analogy is a good one. Yes. My favorite one. It just means people are not exploring their own consciousness. That's all. So why would one's period stop? I can't answer that as a medical professional. But what I can say is your body, you know how they always call it, it's a biological clock. Think of yourself as a cosmic being, right? Because you already are. Think about what you experience in your life. In fact, I would say journal about it. Anytime you come at an impasse in your life, note that. Now, you take what they tell you medically about why it stops, and then you think about that as a spiritual journey as why it stops. And I know it probably sounds very woo-woo to say spiritual, but what is happening in your body is a spiritual process. And so I would look at both and really ask myself, okay, what's going on in my life? What have I experienced around the time that this happened? Or how can I observe my own life and my cycles? Because if you weren't asking your doctor, right? And we lived in a more spiritual time before the advancement of technology and medicine. Number one, how would you ask your local medical practitioner or your village practitioner? How would you ask them? What do you think the results would be? If you've gone to an herbalist, right? Because a lot of people still swear that herbalists don't know what they're talking about. What would they tell you? And I would say compare it based on your intuition because again, things outside of modern day medicine and technology are still shooed away. Remember, it's a spiritual experience in itself too. So I can't like fully answer your question because I'm not a medical professional. You know, they'll be like, oh, she said this. I say observe it from both sides. See both sides of Chanel. See both sides of the algorithm so that you can make a decision for yourself. Somebody asked on YouTube, so all currency will become digital crypto. Yes. Crypt just means hidden, like hidden in a vault. But what is the vault? The cube. The vault's up here. It's the information, the navigation through the systems that are now known as the blockchain that are storing and housing information, kind of like Super Mario when he has to like jump up in the sky. He's the jump man, hidden the cube, and then it opens and he gains data, he gains a coin, he gains information. It's the same way. If you need exploration through that in like video games, go look at your early video games. Someone said the sum of a son and daughter equals new life, the Holy Trinity. Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. How money works inside the matrix. Monies are monies. Money is an algorithmic system. So when you were born, you're docked at a port of call and entry. Just like a ship is ported at a dock and it is berthed. You have a contract that you were put in exchange with the system, the place that you were born. In order to get things from said contract, if you want a job, if you want healthcare services, you are assigned a number. Those numbers become a form of a system. That is not a conspiracy because anyone can logically ask, what do these numbers mean on my birth certificate? What do these numbers mean on my social security card? It is when that concept is taken and people try to hurry up and use it like, let me cash this in. That's when they can start framing you as conspiracy. That's when they can start framing you as crazy because you're not yet bridging open the entire concept. It's metaphysical. And so you become a negotiable instrument. This is what it's called. Because remember, or if you haven't been in live yesterday, we talked about being an instrument or an orchestra within your body. You are a system of harmonics. You are a system of energy. And so you are an instrument that is being traded in exchange for the rights to yourself. Now that I have parked my boat, my body, my spiritual vessel on land, give me this for this. I promise to work for you or work within the system if you house me here. You're technically an alien. You're a sea monster. Not obviously physically. I don't want y'all to go in the mirror and be like, alien? No, it's alien. So alien, that term means to give somebody else something else and hold rights over their property. You are the property. You're giving your personal property, that name, over to a system. Again, let me just say this, y'all, because usually when this is taught online, people claim, oh, if you just sign over this paper, this affidavit, you'll be free. It's not making sense. I'm not saying that it can't be done. There are groups that have successfully learned how to find their sovereignty. But the idea is not to hurry up, run out the door and start signing a bunch of paperwork, because then y'all think that means, oh, that means I don't got to work for the rest of my life. That's not how it works. Tribes have always worked. They've always worked to build civilizations and communities and groups, but there has to be a structure to that. So when people are sitting here wondering, well, how are all these Masons in charge? Because they have formulated groups that operate on structure. The structure are systems of measurement. The same way when you go to a building, right? You see the way modern day buildings are built. They are measured in size. They are given angles and degrees. These are systems of information that are built upon. So the idea isn't how do I hurry up and stop paying bills? Because you got to understand what a bill of sale actually is and a debt note. It is how can I accumulate information to start to liven up my body, to light it back up again, because I am walking around as a dead spirit right now. I feel like I'm alive. I'm breathing. I'm walking around my body every day. But damn, I got to go to that 9 to 5. 9 to 5, 95, 59. I become the green twin. I become the shadow twin working under the name that is technically mine, that has now become an egregore and a vessel in itself. It took me 5 years to really let that concept sink in. And y'all always come in here and say, oh, you're so intelligent. It took me 5 years to be able to sit with that concept, write notes about it, really internalize it, and be able to publicly speak about it without stumbling over my words. So if it took me that long, and I'm not saying, again, I don't think that I'm the epitome of intelligence. I'm an intelligent person, but I've met people far smarter than me. What I am telling you is that it takes time to integrate. It's not McDonald's. You don't instantly get it the next day. There's still people coming online telling y'all what the Illuminati is and they don't even know. Oh, celebrity, Illuminati. You don't even know what the word Illuminati means. The word Illuminati just means illumination, the illumination of systems. That's why they do the 6666 or 666 three times. Three sixes is 360 degrees, a full circle, full illumination. That's why they do that. That's exactly why they do that. And so if your eye is closed, right? Because even as a former photographer, what I will tell you is that I play with light and adjustments, right? How much light is let in through the lens. And so when you are not illuminated in knowledge, when your eye is closed down, when your iris is not taking on the full spectrum of this scenario, you can only see a few things at once. You can't see the full picture. And without the full picture, you're making decisions based on limited information. The same limited information that is being spread around social media then becomes a virus because then people feel like, oh, well, this is how you leave the matrix, and then get caught up in prison, get caught up in jail for trying to do some stuff that they didn't have a full understanding of. Don't rush in. Let yourself learn how to wade through the water. Get there in your own time. Don't rush, learn, become a student. This is why I showed the picture earlier about us being in a school. Earth is a school. Just like if you go in the ocean, a large amount of fish together is called a school. You are a pupil, just like you have a pupil. You are a student, learning, evolving, applying, and then eventually graduating. Graduating like gradual. You are becoming bigger, higher, louder, but also more silent at the same time, because this is why there's so much secrecy in these groups. It's not the more that you say, it's the less you say. Because you say too much, nobody's listening. The less you say, then you can keep more things to yourself, which is why they keep most information at the top and everything else dispersed at the bottom. As above, so below. Now, for me, I'm a bridge. So I'm going to tell y'all regardless. However, I know that even as I mature and get older, my books, my talks, my lectures, that's going to be my legacy. That's why they refer to content that can be repurposed as evergreen content. It's going to continue to grow a forest over time. Even as I'm like spending 1 or 2 hours on social media talking to you guys right now, by the time I'm 50 years old, I'm not doing this shit anymore. I might be going out in person, speaking at lectures if I want to, writing more books to be left behind for the people who advance through the matrix after I'm gone. But I'm also not about to sit here on TikTok all day. TikTok is going to be a dead concept. I give it like 5 years. And I'm giving it more time because I've seen the birth and the death of many social media apps. Some of them come back, some of them don't. It depends on who's doing the pushing, who's doing the formulating. Do they know how humanity's minds work? Do they know how we evolve? Do they know how people are regressing? Because those will be the most successful ones. Just as the people who advance through the matrix and advance through the simulation, they're the ones open and willing to learn. The ones who realize that it's okay to say, I know nothing. It's okay to say I'm still learning. It's okay to say I'm still a student and I'm still evolving through this cycle. Someone said it irked me since 15 and 27 to learn and find contentment and appreciation in learning through labor. I definitely learned that just cleaning around the house. All the years where I blatantly ignored my mom, just like sweeping and cleaning around the house, like, dang, she always cleaning. Now I realize even like when I'm curating my social media profile and I'm blocking comments that are like designed to draw people away from the message, that's cleaning house. That's cleaning house. I'm sweeping out the unwanted. That is also a spiritual practice. When you're sweeping or cleaning in your home, you are cleansing your space for energy because things that are of shadows, things that are darker, they tend to harness themselves in corners because that's where they can gather energy. The corners literally in your house. I mean, I know some of y'all have spiritual practice where you know to sweep corners or to sage in corners or to use Palo Santo in certain corners. You're taking out that negative energy because it does exist in science as well as in the spiritual world as well. Someone said, God bless mothers who slowly allow children to learn this way. I don't even have to hope. You know, sometimes when I'm asked about motherhood and how I run through it, sometimes I'm like, I hope my kids learn. But I'm like, I learned from my mom by design. And my mom was not a teacher about the matrix. She was a teacher of motherhood, of survival, of adapting, even when it was hard, even when emotionally it was taxing. That's how I learned about what I do now, truly. I mean, yeah, what I teach about is very complicated. It's talking about tech and programming and the matrix and all of that. But I think my greatest lessons on why I'm able to do this is just by watching my mother growing up. I was blessed enough to have a mother who was a stay at home mom. I had three younger siblings, and my life was not perfect at all, not a little bit. But I think just the fact that I did grow up initially in a two-parent household with a mother who was nurturing is how I'm able to pass down these very complicated lessons about the matrix in a way where I'm not going to shame people for what they don't know. I'm just going to, if they want an adjustment, like, here, just look this way instead of that way. Look in here instead of out there. There's not going to be a twin flame, a karmic soulmate, a job, a professor, a place that is going to enlighten you more than yourself, than your family. Even people who have gone through terrible things with their family, that's still a lesson, because family is what you make it. I have family that I've met in spaces online. I've met family in, like, one of my oldest friends down here where I live right now. Back before TikTok was a thing, when it was just Instagram, I had just started taking pictures in New Orleans. I got a camera and I started working as a photographer. I reached out to someone who used a similar hashtag in New Orleans, and she was a photographer. She's one of my oldest friends here now. And that was simply off rip, like me trusting. This was back in the days when people were on Craigslist looking for meetups and jobs. Craigslist is kind of like a serial killer site now. But back then, just that openness and trust helped me find one of my oldest friends. And so now that I see the development of that, I'm like, okay, so we need to get comfortable with meeting and gathering in online spaces so that one day we can convert those to public spaces, so that we can meet up again to speak in ceremony and speak in groups like we did before. Yeah, it sounds like church, not gonna lie. But the only thing is, you can come and go as you please. We're not gonna get mad at you because you don't believe in any of it. There's nothing to believe in. Do you believe that you pay bills? Do you believe that you live in a system where someone purposefully designed the internet in a way that was designed to grab your attention? Do you believe that the government has awareness that people's attention spans are slow and they know when to post things, when to have meetings, when to write documents, that they're putting numbers on them? If you don't believe that, that's a belief system. If you believe someone doesn't intentionally have the education to shape a reality, that's your belief system. If you don't believe that, that's on you. I'm not going to force you to look. You can if you want to. It might hurt initially, but if you learn something and you evolve, it hurts a little less. Kind of like when you start lifting weights for the first time. If you lift a super heavy weight, it's going to hurt. Your muscles are going to be sore. But if you practice that over time, you do it over and over again, eventually the weight gets a little lighter. And then you can take on more weight. Then you can take on more knowledge, more information. You grow, you change, you learn, you evolve. Someone said it takes a lot of empathy to teach. That's why I love learning from women. I had to practice what I preach. So a lot of, whenever I come on here, a lot of people say, oh, have you heard of Bobby Hemmett? Have you heard of Brother Panic? Have you heard of Black Magic 363? You heard of Night? Of course I've heard of them. I'm a person with a phone and an internet connection. So of course I've heard of them. But I watched them for so long and I wonder, where are the women at? And why is it that whenever I see the women in the algorithm, they're only teaching about tarot, or they're only teaching about nurturing in some way? And nurture can be taught from different perspectives. And that's no shade. I love learning from all women about different things. But I realized when it came to spiritual leadership, there were more men being pushed to me in my algorithm than women. And so I could do one of two things. I could keep asking in their comment section, when are you going to invite a woman on your show? Or I could be that person. And it's not just because I'm a woman, because usually, especially when spirituality is explained and we're breaking down the binary concepts of man and woman, it sometimes is a fight. Like, I have the knowledge that the masculine and feminine once lived together in one body. I understand what the split is between Sophia and the pleroma. I understand what man is versus woman, why woman has the Stargate portal and man does not, because man is an extension of woman. I do believe they're also equal and they both play an equal part in the experience. But I can either harp on that or I can just be what I want to see, which is a mother, a nurturer, someone who has born children from her own body, talking about these spiritual concepts, talking about things people wouldn't dare to. Like, I got into a conversation with someone about a senator from Texas talking about the Matrix. I'm like, wait, how did we get here? Nobody would ever accept me into a space of leadership talking about large tech corporations with a stay-at-home mom who can barely hold her head above water without a cup of coffee. But when I stopped taking that knowledge in my head, like no one will ever accept me because I'm a mom, it opened up so many doors for me. I ended up on panels, on podcasts, people asking for my knowledge and wisdom. And I'm like, I'm just a mom. But it's more than that because I have the time on my hands to understand how empathy works, how humans work, how they're born, how they start up at the beginning with programs that design who they will become as adults. And that's a superpower. So rather than begging to be on these shows with the men, I'm like, just make your own show. Just make your own show. Don't beg to be on there. Now, I mean, cool, it would be nice to reach a larger audience, but over time, the original priest mothers, the ones who developed these lessons and then passed on to the masculine, will come back. And we're already here. It's just nowhere to find us. Because, I'd be the one, just like other people online. I don't see anybody like this. You got to be what you want to see. You can't wait around for somebody to do it for you. We make up boundaries for ourselves. The Sibyls, yes, the Mommy Wata priestesses, all of that. I think even when you start realizing numbers and things, like for example, Elon Musk is a Cancer. That says something very large about who he is. You're a man working in technology, playing with consciousness, playing with people's brains, claiming to give people sight again. I think he's trying to trademark the word telepathy, or maybe already did. I sat and watched a lecture for the staff of Neuralink before. All these MIT experts and tech experts, what they're really exploring is the consciousness of the feminine and how to encapsulate it in a system that requires encryption systems and passwords and entryways. It's ancient knowledge that looks like you can only learn it at Harvard, or you can only learn it at MIT, or you can only learn it at Yale, when it is a spiritual concept that technically is hijacked. Because if you don't know the origin, you don't know the story. The same as when people keep coming on, what is it, Erica Kirk and Nicki Minaj or whoever on her show. I'm like, y'all keep getting so invested into this story that you don't even realize what the story of America is. That's why they chose her to play this part. Erica Kirk is America's church, not literally, but an allegory and story. They are having her represent the feminine who has lost her masculine partner or her masculine half, which would be Charlie Kirk. Both of their names take in the word Freeman. Kirk means church, right? And so when you look at that as a concept versus an actual name, you start looking, oh, Erica Kirk is from Arizona. She was Miss Phoenix. What does Phoenix actually mean? What role does that have in the formation of the political systems in the United States? Could it be that this actually was a plan? And that the plan is scripted through the names and the reality and the very conversations that we're tuning into about political systems and the economy and wars, not understanding the origin point. The origin point always matters because this story wouldn't be what it was without the original. This is why the Jesus story is being hijacked and pushed over and over again. Charlie in Israel, the free man in Israel, Israel. The same way you're talking about Set, Osiris, Isis, and Nephthys, J.D. Vance, Erica Kirk, Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, they're playing the same roles they've always played. They're just replicating things that have already been done. No Cancer should be doing anything dealing with one's consciousness. I'm a Cancer. I teach about consciousness, just maybe not male cancers. Let me say this, underdeveloped male cancers. Underdeveloped. The developed ones are cool, but not the underdeveloped ones. Is that what they mean by selling their soul? I'm not sure which one you're referring to exactly, but yeah. Let me take this off the screen. But when I watch this whole show, like my heart really goes out for the people who I see, like, did y'all watch Candace Owens? Because she's out here telling the truth. I'm like, y'all haven't experienced real truth yet, because real truth hurts. Real truth sinks into your heart so deep. You sit there for like 3 weeks thinking about what somebody said to you. Like, damn, I can't believe they said that. They really said that. I don't believe it. She lying. She crazy. Real truth is not readily available like that. You have to go searching. It's not on a podcast. It's not on, the number one podcast in America, who's later featured on CNN, which is one of the largest producers of propaganda in America. Like, come on now. Let's be for real. Thank you. The male cancer. Why do you think it's a disease to have cancer? Uh, underdeveloped water signs, I add. Yes, exactly. They just don't they know how to help people drown, not float. I'm here to help people float. People who are developed signs are here to float. And the way you know if you're developed or undeveloped is just usually based on how well you've addressed your traumas, how well you've addressed your shadow. Because for me, I know that there are shadow aspects as well as light aspects to myself. For example, this is just to humble myself so y'all can work on humbling yourselves too through the experience. I'm brilliant. I know I'm brilliant. I know I'm brilliant because I take concepts that would blow people's minds and break them down in a playful way. But I also get caught in my own ego at times. Sometimes I feel like I have to compete with the men around me when it's not a competition. It was never a competition. And sometimes I'll get so in my ego, I feel like I have to prove myself constantly rather than be myself because I'm not proving it to anyone but myself. Even in the building of my business, in the building of my brand, at one point I was like, well, I got to be better than him and I got to deliver it better than him. No, because naturally I already have that gift. So my humility came from sitting with myself and saying, okay, this is not about a race on who can be the best spiritual teacher. This is about how well you're tuned in with yourself and how well your gifts become developed because you stuck to your own story versus trying to be somebody else. I get trapped in the ego and the shadow of my father all of the time. He's the one who gave me my skills to speak. I was put in many classes as a kid on learning how to public speak, learning how to develop language, learning how to speak to a crowd. I learned that as a child, hated every minute of it. And even as I get older, I don't speak to either of my fathers. I don't speak to my biological father or my stepfather. Both of them are masculine aspects of my life. And I have my days where like, damn, will they ever be proud of me? That's not the goal. And I have to remind myself of that daily, wondering if my father will ever accept me or love me based off of my accomplishments is my undevelopment. Because the developed version of myself knows you doing the damn thing despite you not having them around, despite them not backing up everything that you do or say. That shows that you are embodying the very masculine that you lost, which is funny because I'm also a Capricorn rising in tropical astrology. And Capricorn is about that development of those Saturnian features, that discipline, that commitment, and that evolution of truth over time. It is represented by the sea goat. And so when I was younger, I think I was like 19 or 20, I got my first book on cannabis. And my first book, it was exploring the different strains and how they're built. My stepdad found it. And you know what he told me? He said, you think this is what successful people do? And of course, I was like, oh my God, he's right. Successful people don't talk about cannabis. My very first podcast I ever got featured on after I was born was talking about my experience with cannabis after birthing my first child. A very well known podcast in California reached out to me and asked me to be on the show as a guest. And it was at that moment I knew that was somebody else's reality that was shaping what I could do or what I would say. Later on, I got more public speaking about my experiences with sacred medicine as a woman in a world that had told me that these practices of engaging with ancient plant medicines were not only illegal, but they were destructive and harmful to the brain. And then I actually did my research and I said, wait a minute, this has been practiced for thousands of years. Why would somebody tell me that? And the more I got vocal, the more I developed my voice, the more I developed that part of my intuition that told me you don't have to be what somebody else tells you because you're the development of many women and many ancestors who came before you who already knew that this was medicine before somebody else said it wasn't. Because the same systems are now hijacking it and trying to resell it to you within their systems. You got to get smarter than that. You know better than that. Your spirit knows better than that because you've done this before. And so that evolution was just a call to awareness like, okay, so maybe my dad wasn't right. Maybe he just gave me the skills I needed to develop my own voice. And it's happened. I went on to birth two beautiful Taurus children, and Taurus is all about the voice, the expression of the vagus nerve, represented by the second house, represented by the planet Venus, which is of motherhood, which is of love. And now that I know all those things about myself, I use it to teach other people about themselves. And to me, honestly, even on the days where I don't have all the money that I need to do something, even when I'm worried about what's going to happen the next day, that becomes the gift. The awareness is the gift. And that gift has carried me up until this point. You know, I turned 33 this year and I was like, okay, it's the master teacher year. What's about to happen now? It's about mastering all the knowledge that I've acquired over the years. The days I didn't have any money, the days I was smoking a little bit too much weed with friends when I had to go to class the next day. The days where my parents kicked me out because I didn't want to go with their rules and I had to figure out life on my own. That falling on my face has developed the speaker that you see before you right now. And it's not like, oh my gosh, you got all the money in the world, you got all this. No, there are a lot of days where I still go through the suffering, but I also know how to pick myself up again and keep going because this isn't ending anytime soon. It is the illusion that I see when people come online, like, y'all, the Matrix is ending. Y'all, the elites are eating the mermaids. I'm like, you got to explain analogies to people. You have to be able to explain why people use euphemisms, why they use certain language to confuse, because that becomes a form of casting. You watched all 7 Harry Potter movies. Now go explain it. You spent enough time consuming. Now go explain it to people so that they know it and they live it and they understand it in their bodies. So we should embrace the fall and enjoy the climb back up as much as you can. As much as you can. That doesn't mean don't cry. It doesn't mean don't have emotions. It doesn't mean that you're not carrying some of the heaviest traumas you've ever gone through in life. It means start working that muscle. That heart is the muscle. Being able to carry the heavy load is the muscle. You develop that muscle because that muscle is also connected to your brain. Your head and your heart are working together as one to balance you into the reality. What was the podcast called? Blunt Blowing Mama. That was my first podcast I ever got featured on. If you go to my website in my press section, there's a link to it. That was back in 2020 when I gave birth to my first child. I would say I'm more of a developed speaker since then. I've gone back and listened to it like once, and I think my voice was a little bit more baby. I've actually noticed, like, when I first made my first YouTube video versus now, I've noticed how much my voice has dropped. I'm like, that's how you know somebody's going through life. I used to be like, and yeah, guys, so this is what I've learned about a spiritual journey. I'm like, either you gonna learn it or you don't. There's a mass difference in the way my voice has developed over time. I'm like, damn, I've probably been through some shit because that sounded so like optimistic. I think even I had an Instagram named Optimistic Soul, which was a song by Buju Banton that I was listening to back when I was listening to a lot of reggae music. But I'm like, damn, my voice done dropped like I'd have been through something. uh, hold on. Let me see. Are there certain steps to lock in for a 2026? Get a good teacher, get a good notebook, get some tea, and enjoy the ride because they just gonna up the ante with trying to keep people under mass psychosis. More attention, more awareness, more hijacking. And by hijacking, I mean like putting things in your algorithm that are designed to keep you trapped, stuck, not advancing. Learn about the things that you are ready to about yourself to fully develop your personal course in life. That's really just saying, what am I here for? What am I here to advance in my bloodline? What am I here to advance within myself? I don't need to learn it tomorrow. All I need to do is start moving in alignment with who I say I want to be, the thing I may have denied myself as a kid, the thing someone told me wasn't possible. How can I start to experience a more limitless reality by balancing my own emotions in my body to move forward on action? Because having the knowledge is only half the battle. Becoming aware is half the battle. It's how do we act on it once we know it? And everybody's not expected to move the same way. We have people with many different gifts who will learn and give back to humanity in different ways. It's how you are developing these gifts and mastering them over time. Um, what about developing a shitload of freckles when you turn 30? I don't know. I've noticed I have gotten like freckles in different spaces. I've gotten older. The women on my mom's side of the family usually get them here. I view it as a peek up to wisdom. I'm waiting for my gray hairs to come in because y'all, once my hair starts going gray, I'm like, we doing the whole thing. It's a sign of wisdom at that point. I don't want any kind of Botox. Like I do wear makeup, but I don't want any Botox, any filler, no nothing. I want to age with grace because I've seen Black women who are 70 years old who look good. I'm not afraid of getting older at all. In fact, I consider it like a reward to be able to have knowledge and be healthy in that knowledge, to allow myself the evolution of not giving a shit. Because you realize the older most people get, they just stop caring. And how younger people are so concerned about image and how they look and the perfection behind it. I want to go out in this cycle of the Matrix knowing I did everything I wanted to. I embodied myself as much as I could and never waited around for someone to tell what I should look like. Tell me what I should look like, what I should say, what is socially acceptable. Because I trusted myself, I trusted my intuition, I trusted that this is not a permanent experience, it's temporary. How you spend your life is up to you. What you choose to do with your life is up to you. Someone on YouTube said, "Can we enjoy music without it affecting our subconscious if we set intentions?" I'm talking about pop and rap songs. I believe so. I mean, you gotta ask yourself why you wanna listen to certain things. Are you conscious of the lyrics? Are you conscious of what you're repeating out loud? I mean, I can, like, if y'all want me to decode a song, right? Because I've been asked, "Can you decode?" I decoded "Hiss" by Megan Thee Stallion. Do I actually wanna sit around listening to Megan Thee Stallion? No. But I can tell you some interesting things. She put out that song in the year of the snake. She also released 2 other songs with snake names in them. She did a lot of rituals within the music video that denoted the serpent body and what it's used for. Am I sitting here getting hypnotized or programmed by it? No. Can I listen to it actively? Yes. Now, if I'm listening or looking for music to awaken me, I usually just listen to frequencies or silence. There's nothing really on the radio right now or on streaming services that have me like, you know what? But there are conscious artists, and you can be a conscious artist making conscious music. I'm sure that there are plenty of people out here making conscious music. It's just not mainstream. I would love to hear you decode Led Zeppelin. Ooh, that would be a good one. You should email me, send me what song or what album. Led Zeppelin would be a good one. How do you build your intuition? You know how on the back of a dollar it says, "In God we trust"? What is a trust? You're entrusting someone with something of value to you, right? But if you are your own inner God, right? Intuition is really about developing trust with yourself. Give yourself permission to explore your own consciousness and your own belief systems versus how they're being framed by other people. Intuition is that form of trust. I'm giving myself back to myself. I'm the prize. I'm giving myself everything that was stolen and externalized so that I know myself again. It's a young man who teaches history here in TikTok, but through raps my kids learn from. I've seen him. He's a great example of that. I can't remember what his screen name is right now, but he's a great example. I've seen him on several different platforms before. That's the way people activate. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you. It's always awesome to learn from people, but you start taking your power back when you start becoming the creator again. Someone said on TikTok, "It's difficult because society boxes me into what they think I am." Why are you always looking at what society is doing? Who cares? What is society? A group of people. But which group of people are we talking about? We talking about the ones that they show you what you want to see on your algorithm? Are you talking about the ones outside your door? Are you talking about the ones down the street? Society is just a group of people. Where is your attention going? Your energy goes where your attention flows. Isn't that what that guy Joe Dispenza says? Which all he's doing is taking the same spiritual concept people have known for years. Don't worry about what they got going on over there. Worry about you. Unless you're using it in your personal teachings, it doesn't matter what society thinks of you. It matters what you think of you. I'm sure your parents have probably told you that at least once in your life. It matters what you think. I still tell my daughter that. She has a little cousin and is always saying, "Well, my cousin said, I said, "What do you think? What do you believe?" Because that's what's important more than anything. Somebody said, "What's a good spiritual hygiene routine? I want to learn to balance my spirituality with my logical, tangible life." Not clocking in for the internet as soon as you wake up, having peace time with yourself, even if it's like playing music, even if it's just speaking positivity into yourself, speaking affirmations into yourself, and then getting on with your day. Before you start opening up the program that is the phone or is the screen, have a conversation with yourself first. The first person that you speak into the day should not be TikTok or Instagram or any social media app. It should be, how are you speaking to yourself? You just came from the dream realm. You just spent 5 to 8 hours venturing into the subconscious space of your mind, only to come back here jet lagged. And the first thing you do is, what they doing online? Just talk to yourself. I think that's a good spiritual hygiene routine. Cleanse yourself, take a shower. I have been trying cold showers again lately, which I'd made a practice before because I was getting my body into focus mode, focus with myself. So I would reduce the heat that I usually have because as a woman, I love a steaming hot shower. However, it was uncomfortable for me to start putting myself in cold water because my body and my nervous system would adjust and hyper focus on the fact that my body suddenly felt lower temperatures. But it also allowed me to hyper focus on getting up out of that shower. So I'm like, let me hurry up and cleanse myself real quick. But it also put me into a focused state as well. Someone on TikTok said, "What do you think it means spiritually when all friendships dissipate from your life? That you're moving into a new frequency. You're moving into an alignment with a different version of yourself." It's kind of like what I said earlier about allowing the old version of yourself to die so a new one can be born. And friendships don't always go away forever. You know, I've had friends when I was developing my spiritual journey who I kind of stopped talking to for some time because they didn't get it. And I do find that when I talk to them again, sometimes we're still bonding over the past. But I've also had friends who I've known for a very long time who still don't talk about any of the stuff I do. And we still find things to talk about and love because you're a multifaceted being. You don't solely have to we live in the matrix realm. You can live in y'all want to go get a drink. Y'all want to go out dancing. You want to go to, a local festival together. You can still enjoy life. But usually, when friends go away, it's just a sign that you're moving into a new area of your life. And sometimes it can feel isolating. It can feel like this is the end. I'll never have anybody again and nobody will get me. But that's not the truth. It's the same way an algorithm knows what to bring you and push into your feed. What are you consciously feeding yourself in your life? And when you start doing that, you start to notice people of a similar origin or background start showing up in your life. Someone said, "What do you think about James Cameron or Avatar movies?" I think that James Cameron is tapped into the tech and the space realms because he has a bit of an obsession of the original people of this earth. Avatar, Terminator, Ready Player One. Well, I don't know if he did Ready Player One. That might have been Steven Spielberg. But you see what the themes of his movies. It's all about spiritual consciousness. I believe James Cameron is also part of like the space Mars colony or something. It's just like a group of nerds who believe that they're going to Mars. But Mars is also a concept as well. We'll get into that on another video. Breath work definitely is a great spiritual concept. How many times in the day are you stopping and tuning into your own breath? How many times do we like slow down and be like, oh, I have a heartbeat? How many times do you do that a day? How many times do you stop and just realize, wow, I actually have oxygen that's running from the base of my spine to my crown chakra? You see how I just got quiet like that? That's what you do. Because I can keep a room live, but also I was a meditation teacher. I teach how to slow down the mind. When you slow things down, that's also how you're able to process more information. As someone who comes from an ancestral line that uses beats and music to wake up the heart and the body and the mind, we also use it to slow things down. If you try to encapsulate everything that the Matrix has to offer in a high impact event, it can feel collapsing under the own psyche. When you slow things down, give it frame by frame, allow yourself to tap into that breath. Remember, on the periodic table, oxygen is replaced by the number 8. 8 is also the number that 11 sister on Stranger Things, that's the number they gave her. Her name was Kali, like the goddess Kali Ma, the destroyer of worlds. And so when you're looking into these concepts and you understand, well, if breath is life and life is oxygen and it's the air that's running through my lungs and through my nose that is keeping me grounded on the physical earth plane, when I feel like the boat is being rocked and there's too much going on, slow your breath down. Slow your thinking. Stop trying to overprocess. Just let things be. How do you interpret synchronicities as in saying a word and hearing it on the radio? Same way you tune a frequency, when you're moving between radio stations and they're static, and then when you slow down and you start to stop on the right frequency, all of a sudden you hear a song. That means you're on the same wavelength. The same wavelength is producing the same sound and the same vibration. And so when you stop on that, there's less noise. You're in alignment with something. If aliens didn't exist, it's weird there's so many movies about them. It's not that they don't exist, which is, we're going to wrap up the live in a second. It's not that they don't exist. It's the concept of what you believe an alien is. I broke it down through the language because remember, the English language is very disruptive. The Anglo-Saxon language is very confusing. You have to start looking into the origin and the root words of things, but alien is a lien. A lien. And a lien is the right to hold debt over another by way of property. What is the property? It's intellectual property. It's the mind. Who has created the images of what you've seen as aliens for years? Hollywood, the entertainment industry. If you look and pay attention to the construction of the way they've shown you aliens, they usually are represented by brains. They usually have like brains inside of a tube. They usually have elongated skulls. They usually are either gray, blue, or green. Most times. Now and again, they'll have some different colors, but generally speaking, through most Hollywood and entertainment depictions, that's what they tell you aliens look like. Same colors that they've shown fish creatures, mermaids, sirens. The same color the matter in the brain is gray, right? But has pink folds. So you have to ask yourself, who shaped my perception of what an alien was according to language and image? It's not that they don't exist. We're talking about a higher intelligence from a foreign land. What is foreign? Anything outside of the physical encapsulated space. So if you know that you were born from your mother's waters, isn't that foreign land? You're not breathing oxygen. You're not breathing here on the air. You're in water. You're in an amniotic sac. It's not that they don't exist. It's how they exist. What does it mean for people who can't use the green plant medicine without panicking? Then you don't need to use it. You don't need to use it immediately. Breath work is just as effective. The more time you spend with breath work, the more effective you will find it. But okay, guys, I am going to end the live stream for today. Thank you so much for everyone who participated. As usual, you can visit my website, tailoredhealingcollective.com, to book your own personal decode. We have the 2026 decodes and the personal transmissions. Tonight, we are having our first class studying AI from an entrepreneurship background to learn about financial and social credit algorithms. That class is available in a package, which you can purchase from my website. First class is at 7 p.m. tonight and every Saturday for 5 weeks. Also, my previous classes like Oracle Mystery School are available on my website. Everything on my website outside of readings, decodes, are now 25% off until the end of the year using the code ENDOFYEAR25. If you are interested in any of my lectures, any of my work, everything is tagged in the link in my bio on TikTok, or you can visit my website via YouTube. I'm going to keep doing this work, guys, and I hope that it encourages you all to do the same within yourselves. This matrix journey doesn't ever really end. It just continues through knowledge, passing it along, and becoming more aware of our experience so that we can grow and develop throughout time. So I will probably be back on sometime this week. If not, you guys know where to find me. I drop Oracle transmissions and decodes on TikTok as often as I can, as well as YouTube. Discord community is completely free. You can find the link in my bio on TikTok or visit my website. And as always, you guys, stay up. It's not the end of the world. We're just learning and becoming more aware of the world around us. So I'm going to go ahead and end live. The live replay will be available on YouTube. Give it like 20 or 30 minutes. It takes a minute to upload when we have longer lives. And it'll be on there and available for you to replay and share with a friend. So we'll talk soon.
Tailored Healing TV by The Oracle, guiding people to the discovery of self.